the only thing that remains consistently constant across the tides of time is change itself. Changes are inevitable in life, but our response to these changes may differ. On one hand, if we try to resist these changes beyond a certain level, we will fall prey to unpleasant repercussions. On the other hand, if we choose to be accommodative, adapt, and learn how to turn the tides in our favor, we will reap benefits like never before. Although we often antagonize even those changes that are entailed by a better future, owing to the resultant discomfort, and they are a great opportunity for growth more often than not. And such changes assert great importance and command great significance in an organizational setting. That is why we are here to apprise you of the role played by effective change management in making smart choices within an organization through this session. Furthermore, you will also learn how to increase productivity, decrease risks, and implement changes successfully at an individual as well as at an organizational level. So stay tuned and let's collectively explore the efficacy of change management. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I want to request you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications bell so that you don't miss out on any new updates or video releases from Great Learning. If you enjoy this video, show us some love and like this video. Knowledge increases by sharing, so make sure you share this video with your friends and colleagues. Make sure to comment on the video for any queries or suggestions and I'll respond to your comments. Hello. My name is Shantanu Rana and I am going to teach you this course on change management by Great Learning. I am sure that you must have heard this statement that change is the only constant. But at the same time, we all know that whenever we are trying to change ourselves, there's always some resistance towards it. We do not accept change very easily because whenever we are trying to change anything, be it any processes or the environment around us, we always have to come out of our comfort zone. And that is not something which comes to human beings very naturally. So whenever we are trying to change something, there will always be some resistance towards it. So change is the only constant, but there's always some resistance towards it, because of which nobody loves change. And that's why whenever we are talking about implementing a change successfully, we have to manage it properly. Because be it at any level, at an individual level, organizational level, project level, or enterprise level, we will have to manage the change. Only then we will be able to make sure that it is implemented successfully. Because otherwise people will resist it and we will never be able to implement it. That is the main reason we are going to learn all those skills on how exactly we can manage a change, what exactly are the skills required, what are the different methods that we can use. All of that we will be exploring in this particular course. So let's move forward and have a look at the agenda first and see what exactly we are going to cover in this course one by one. So the first thing that we are going to cover is need for change. Before getting into the depth of how exactly to manage a change, first of all, we will understand what exactly is change and what exactly is the need for change. What are some external forces and what are some internal forces for change. Then we'll see more about resistance to change. Why exactly do we resist change? What is the reason behind that? And is all this resistance bad, or is there any bright side to this resistance also? All of that we will be exploring in the second module. Then types of organizational change. What are the different types available? Then what is change management? We'll get to know the definition of change management. Then importance of change management, why this skill is extremely important, why do we need to manage the change at the first place. Then barriers to change management. One, we have seen that resistance to change is one of the barriers. Then just like that, what are the other barriers to this process of change management? Then 3 levels of change management. I have already told you that it can be at an individual level, at an organizational level, or at an enterprise level. We will be seeing how these 3 levels are interconnected with each other. Then we will be discussing 2 models for change management. One is ADKAR's model, one is Kotter's change management model. These 2 models we will be discussing in detail. And then factors of successful change management. Whenever we are making a change, whenever we are implementing a change, how to make it successful, what are the important factors behind it. All of these things we will be exploring in this course in much more detail. All right. Now, before getting into the depth of that, what exactly is change management and what are the different methods for managing a particular change, let's first try to understand that what exactly is change and what is the need for change. What are some external forces and what are some internal forces for change? All of that we will be exploring in this particular module. So, as you can see on the screen, that change is nothing but a general transition of something. We are always at a current position and there's always a goal. There's always a desired position where we want to reach. Now, moving from this current position to that future desired position is nothing but change. That's a general transition. If you talk at an organization level, then change can come in a variety of shapes and sizes. For example, a change in a company's structure, strategies, rules, processes, technologies, or maybe culture. All of these are nothing but general transitions, which is change. And there can be various reasons behind it. There's not one or two reasons. It can be internal to the organizations, or sometimes it can be external to the organizations as well. For example, let's say there's some government restriction because of which we need to change certain rules, certain regulations within the organization. That will be a change because of some external factor. If you talk about this COVID pandemic situation, right, because of that we had to change a lot of things within our organizations, changing from work from office to work from home. All of this is nothing but an example of change, and the reason behind that can be external or internal to the organization. Now, as you can see in the third point, that the change could be planned for years or imposed on an organization due to a change in the environment. Sometimes we see some symptoms. We see that there is something which is going wrong within the organization, because of which we realize that we need to change. There are certain processes, certain rules, certain strategies that we need to change. But sometimes there will be some external factor that we do not know about. It will come, and then as a reaction to that, we will have to change. So it's never a pre-planned thing in certain cases. In certain cases, we will plan the change, but in certain cases, especially when the forces are external, we'll have to change as a reaction of that particular thing. Same example again, if you take COVID pandemic situation, we never knew that COVID is going to come, but it came and accordingly we had to change as a reaction to that. So all of that is nothing but an example of unplanned change. Now, after all, what you have to remember is that change is nothing but a general transition that is moving from your current state to a future desired state. Now, let's understand what exactly are the external and internal forces for change, that is need for change. So if you look in the external forces, the number one is social. So social life of people or the customers is changing. Accordingly, the organization will also have to change. They'll have to maybe change their products or services. If demographics is changes, similarly, organization will have to change. Let me give you an example for that. If you have heard about this company called Evan, in this company, it's a cosmetics company. They used to go door to door marketing, and the target market was housewives. But eventually, with time, even housewives started working. They were involved in a 9 to 5 job. So their market was changing, and accordingly, this company had to change. So this was because of demographics, which was an external force for the change within the organization. Then political changes, all these government restrictions and all, this will be a part of political forces. Then cultural, economic forces, technological, maybe we are using certain technology in our organization which is very outdated. Maybe we can get better outcome with a new technology. Then we need to change. That can be an external force too. Then industry. Maybe there are a lot of organizations within an industry, let's say an edtech industry or e-commerce industry. If all other companies are providing something that we don't have, then all the customers will be attracted to them and not to us. So to make sure that we survive in the business, we also need to change. That's customer demands and competition. Now, if we talk about customer demands, because when we are an organization, either we provide a service or a product. If customer demands are changing, then in order to match those demands, we also need to change. We cannot tell the customer to change. We'll have to change as an organization. We'll have to change our products, our strategies, our services in order to meet the customer demands. So these are all nothing but external forces for change. Now, if you look at the internal forces, then that can be low performance, low satisfaction, If we see that employees of our organization are not performing well, or there is no satisfaction, or they are feeling unproductive, or maybe there is an introduction to some new mission, new leadership, or there's a lot of conflict between the employees of an organization, between different groups of the organization, or between teams, then that means we need to change certain processes so that we can reduce these conflicts, these low performance and low satisfaction rates. In order to change all of that, we need to change certain processes and strategies within the organization. So these are all nothing but internal forces for change. Now, what we have realized is that change is nothing but a general transition, and there can be external forces behind it or internal forces behind it. All right. Now, after discussing what exactly is the need for change, let's try to understand how do we resist change? Why do we resist it? And is all this resistance bad, or some part of it is good also? So as you can see on the screen, that change is the only constant. We always have to change. We always have to move from our current position to a desired position. But the problem is that no one likes change. Especially we as individuals, whenever we talk about change, we have to come out of our comfort zone. And that is not something which we like, because we do not want to change ourselves or the processes or environment around us. According to a survey done by SHRM, that is Society of Human Resource Management, employee resistance to change is one of the main reasons for its failures. If you talk at an organizational level, then changes generally fail because individuals or employees of the organizations will never support it. They do not want to change themselves or the processes around them. So it is very crucial that we have to manage a change properly in order to implement it successfully, especially when we are talking at an organizational level. If you talk about the reactions to change, then it can be active resistance. That means they are fully going to just not being happy with the change. Passive resistance is being unhappy, but at the same time it's okay. They are not gonna say anything about it. They are not gonna resist it very actively. Then compliance is they are not gonna support it, but they also are not gonna talk about it. They will change, but they won't like it much. Enthusiastic support it, they are going to support it fully, and they'll be in favor of resistance. They'll be like, yes, we need to change from our current position to desired position. We need this general transition and we are good to go. So that's a basic cycle. Active resistance is really bad and we have to work really hard in order to implement the change. Passive resistance, a little less. Compliance, a little less. Enthusiastic support, you don't have to work much because individuals are already in favor of changing processes, changing strategies. Now let's try to understand, why do we even resist change at the first place? What is the reason behind that? So first is change disrupts our habits. We always are habitual of certain things. We like to do something in a certain way and then we become habitual of that. And easily we do not want to come out of it because we have given our time, energy, efforts to learn that particular process. And then coming out of it means coming out of our comfort zone and then learning something new, which will need creativity, efforts, time, energy again. So that is not very natural to human beings. We do not want to come out of our comfort zone. That is one reason we resist change. Then based upon the personalities, some people are risk averse. There are certain people who do not like to take risks. They are risk avoidant. And that is also that is completely based upon your personalities. If your personality is like that, you're definitely not going to like change. Because whenever we talk about change, there's a lot of risk involved in it. You never know when the processes will change, what will be the result. Whether it will be positive or it will be negative. You never know that. So if it is so much of conjecture about it, you will never really understand whether the processes are going to work in your favor or against you. So there will be a lot of risk involved. And if your personality is risk averse, you are never going to like it and you are not going to support it also. Then change brings feelings of uncertainty. Again, you never know what will be the result. So there will be a lot of feelings for uncertainty. Then change can affect performance negatively under the new system. So there's a fear of failure as well. Then change may affect power and influence within the organization. If there are certain people or a certain group that is under influence or within the power, but after change, maybe things will change. So they will always have this fear of losing that influence or power. And that's why they will also resist change. So these are some of the basic reasons that we as human beings within the organization resist change. Now, how do we overcome that? That is one thing we are going to learn in change management. How do we manage it properly at an individual level and at an organizational level overall? Now let's try to understand whether all this resistance that we talk about, that human beings are resisting change, is it bad or there's some part of it which is good also? So as you can see in the first point, that in some cases resistance to change can be a good force as well. Opposition to change is an important form of feedback that should not be overlooked. Why are so many individuals opposed to the planned changes? Are they convinced that the new system will fail? If that is the case, why? If we'll go to those individuals and we'll ask them why are they actually worried that we should not change, why are they not supporting change, there will be a lot of reasons that will come onto the table, and we'll start analyzing those reasons, which will make our change management process very easy, which will lessen our change efforts basically. And that's good. That's for the good. Because if people will point out certain things which are going to help us in the overall change management process, so this resistance is going to work in our favor. So it is a very good form of feedback that we get from employees or individuals. It is feasible to achieve a more successful change by taking input from people, even if it is negative input, and implementing their suggestions into the change effort. So if let's say one person, he is very worried that he will lose his influence or power when the change will be implemented. So we should actually try to analyze that situation. And if we'll analyze, we'll always find some root certain things which will help us in the change efforts, in the change management process. So we can simply say that yes, there is always some resistance to change, but not all that resistance is bad. Some part of it is good, especially the feedback part. If we try to realize those feedbacks, those reasons behind the resistance, then we will always make our change management process much easier. Alright, now let's try to understand that what exactly are the different types of organizational change. Whenever we talk about change at an organization level, then there are two main types of it. Number one is reactive change. Number two is proactive change. As the name suggests, reactive changes are those in which the external forces drive an organization to make a change quickly. For example, if you talk about this COVID pandemic situation, we never knew that COVID is going to come and we never planned for it. But when COVID hit the world, we had to change all the processes, all the strategies within the organization. We all were working from office and then we had to work from home. Government restrictions came into the picture and there were other processes, rules that were changed because of COVID. And that was never planned. It was an unplanned change. It was as a reaction to COVID situation. Right. So these kind of changes which are as a reaction to an external force are known as reactive changes. Then proactive changes, when a number of variables cause an organization to consider and ultimately conclude that certain changes are required. Again, let me explain this to you with the help of a very simple example. Let's say within an organization, every second day there's some fight between two employees, two different teams or two different groups. There's some kind of bad negative energy or dispute going on every second day. That means it is a symptom. We can see that all the people are fighting. That means there is something wrong with our processes or with our rules. It is not very well versed with employees. So we need to change those processes or we need to change those rules and regulations. Now that is nothing but a proactive change. We will plan for that change and then we'll implement it. So if a change is not planned and is implemented directly, that will be reactive change. Generally, those are reactions to some external forces. But if a change is planned and then implemented successfully, that will be a proactive change. Because these will be planned and then these will be by seeing a symptom, we are changing certain processes. These are not reactions to anything. So that is the basic difference between reactive changes and proactive changes at an organization level. Alright, so now that we have understood that what exactly is change, what is the resistance to change or what is the need for change, all the basics are clear. Now it's time for us to move forward and try to understand that what exactly is change management. As you can see on the screen, that a systematic strategy to coping with the transformation of an organization's goals, processes or technologies is known as change management. We have seen that change can be anything at an organization level. Let's say if we are changing the structure of the organization or technologies in the organization, or maybe the culture of the organization. All of that is nothing but an example of change, a general transition. But how do we do that? Since change is a tough process, there's a lot of resistance, there are a lot of barriers to it. We cannot implement change very easily and successfully. So, in order to implement a change successfully, especially at an organization level, we need to make sure that we have a systematic approach, we have a systematic strategy. And that systematic strategy to implement a change successfully within an organization is known as change management. It can be at an individual level also. The goal of change management is to put in place techniques for bringing about change, controlling it, and assisting people in adapting to it. If you talk about any change, maybe at an enterprise level or at an organization level, at the end of the cycle, there is an individual who needs to change. If the individuals are going to change, then overall we will be able to implement this change successfully. So we have to make sure whenever we are talking about change management, the main objective is to bring the change first, then implement it, especially at an individual level, and then sustain it also. So first of all, it's like we'll unfreeze from our current processes, then there will be a moment that is change will be implemented, and then we have to sustain that change. So these will be the three processes. Then individuals, teams, and organizations must have a systematic plan in place to move from their current position to a desired future position. Because we cannot change or we cannot do this general transition very easily, because people are not going to support it. There will be a lot of barriers, a lot of resistance to change. So in order to make sure that we overcome all of that and we implement the change successfully, we must have a systematic plan at an individual level, at a team level, project level, or at an organization level as well. Now let's try to understand what are the 7 R's of change management. These will be in the form of questions that you need to ask yourself before we try to implement a change. Number 1 is, who raised the change? Why do we need it? It's an external force. It's an internal force. What exactly? Who raised it? Then what is the reason for the change? Why do we need to change certain processes or certain strategies? What exactly is the reason behind that? Then what return is required from the change? What are we expecting out of it? When we are going to change, what will be the outcome of it? What is the result that we are assuming we'll get? Then what are the risks involved in the change? What are the processes that we are going to change? What will be the certain risks that are involved that we need to see and plan accordingly? Then what resources are required to deliver the change? There can be financial support required, sponsorship, anything. What are the resources which are required? Then who is responsible for the build, test, and implement part of the change? Then what is the relation between this change and other changes? Especially when we talk at an organizational level, it is not just one change. There are always a lot of changes that will come together. Because when we talk about an organization, let's say only a product is going to change. But in order to change the product, all the teams will have to change. Accordingly, sales team will have to implement certain changes. Finance team will have to implement certain changes. HR team will also have to implement certain changes. So even if we are just changing one part of the organization, all the teams, all the processes will have that effect in one or the other way. But overall, you need to remember these 7 R's of change management before implementing a change or before making a change effort. Now, this actually, what I'm going to discuss here is called Lewin's model for change management. So organizational change management can be divided into 3 manageable steps. This is one of the best examples to understand what exactly is change, how it is implemented at an organization level. So it has 3 steps in it. Number 1 is unfreeze. When preparing for the forthcoming changes, a team or organization must unfreeze the existing processes and views. Currently, you are a part of certain strategies, certain rules, or certain processes. First of all, you have to unfreeze yourself from those processes and those rules. Then we'll implement the change, which is the second step, change. This is the implementation phase. Effective change necessitates clear and consistent communication across all relevant channels. So in the second step, it is implementation phase, that is change is implemented and throughout communication should be there. With the employees, with the teams, groups, there should be clear-cut communication so there is no doubt. Then refreeze, which is the third step. The refreeze stage secures the new process, assuming accurate input and continued communication happened during the second step, that is the change step. Let me explain this to you very simply. Let's say there is an ice cube and we need to make a cone out of it. How will you do that? First of all, we have to melt the ice cube. Then we have to put it in a container which is of the shape of a cone. And then we have to freeze it. So first thing that we do is unfreeze from the current processes. So if you are a part of certain technology right now, certain processes, first of all, you will unfreeze from that. You will have a clear mind. You will not be a part of any process. Then we will implement the change. Once the change is implemented, then you have to refreeze in the new processes. So new processes should always be introduced when you have a clear mind. If you are currently a part of certain processes, at the same time, I cannot come and tell you that you have to be a part of a new process. First of all, I have to unfreeze from you from those particular processes. Then the change should be implemented. And then to sustain that change, we need to refreeze. That is, make sure we have to plan accordingly. There should be a systematic approach in order to make sure that you will sustain that particular change that is implemented in the second step. So this is called Lewin's model for change management, in which there are 3 steps. You unfreeze, then you implement the change, and then you refreeze. That is, you sustain the change. So that's what change management process is all about. So there's a lot of planning and plotting whenever we talk about implementing a change. All right. So now that we have understood that what exactly is change management, it's time for us to move forward and try to understand that why exactly change management is so important. As you can see on the screen, the first point says that it reduces operational costs and improves revenue. Whenever you are making a change or you are making a general transition from your current position to a future desired position, you will always make sure that there is reduction in operational costs. And since you are changing with customer demands, with your competition, with your industry, there will always be increment in the profitability. So overall revenue will increase. So that's one of the beauties of change management. If you are able to implement a change successfully by managing it, by controlling it. Then point number 2 is it helps in remaining relevant and profitable. Let me explain this to you with the help of a very good example of a mobile phone company called Nokia. You must have heard about Nokia. It used to be one of the biggest brands at one point of time. But eventually it lost its charm and it did not appeal to customers as much as it used to do. The main reason behind that was that it was not relevant at all, and hence it will not be profitable also. Customer demands were changing, technologies were changing, and overall there were changes in the mobile phone industry. But this brand was not changing according to that. Hence, it was not profitable, it was not relevant for the customers. Point number 3 is it increases the probability of project success. Overall, if you are changing according to the industry, according to the time, according to the demands of the customers, then there will be more chances that project objectives will be met and there will be increases in the probability that your project will succeed. Then there will always be an ensured match between the demands and the results. There are some customer demands. You can never tell the customers to change according to the organization. As an organization, you'll have to change according to the customer demands. Whatever product, services you are providing, you'll have to change that to make sure that it's a match between the customer demands and your product and services. So all of these are nothing but examples of where change management is extremely important. That if you do not implement change successfully, you will lose on all these things. There will be no reduction in operational costs. Your revenue will not improve. You will not be relevant if you do not implement change successfully. So as an organization, we will always have to change. Yes, it is the only constant. Since there is a lot of resistance attached to it, we have to make sure that we implement it successfully by managing it, controlling it. We must have a proper strategy and a proper plan. If we'll implement a change successfully by controlling it, by having a proper plan and a strategy using certain methods at an individual level, we'll make sure that we'll have all these advantages of changes. All right. So now that we have understood what exactly is the importance of change management, it's time for us to understand that what are the barriers to change management. So point number 1 is that lack of executive support. If senior management is not going to drive the change, then it is bound to fail and nobody can stop that. So we must have a leader. There should not be absent leader. We should have a leader who's driving the change so that everyone can understand what exactly is the need for change. Why do we need to make these certain changes in these particular processes at an organization level or at an individual level? Then inadequate resourcing. Like any other area, even change will need resourcing, finances, depending upon the scale and the scope of the change. So if that is inadequate, then again it is bound to fail. Then resistance to change. As we have already seen that at the end of all the cycles, there's an individual who's always resistant to change. They don't want to change themselves because they don't want to come out of their comfort zone. So we need to overcome that also. And most of the people, either they resist change actively or passively. There are very few people who will support change very enthusiastically. So we have to keep that thing in mind as well, because this is one of the greatest barriers to change management. The number four is change resistant structure or culture of the organization. There are certain organizations where, let's say there's a lot of internal politics, or maybe there is a lot of conflict, dispute between teams. In that case, it is overall environment is very negative. It is very change resistant. So again, it is one of the greatest barriers for change management, especially at an organizational level. All right. So now that we have understood what exactly is the importance of change management and what are the barriers to change management, it's time for us to understand what are the three different levels of change management. We have already discussed about it that there are three levels on which we can see change management. One is at an individual level, one is at an organizational level, and one is at an enterprise level. So if you talk about individual change management, then it is an understanding of how one person makes a change successfully. You talk about any level, be it within a team, within an organization, at a project level, or at an enterprise level. At the end of this cycle, there's an individual who needs to change. If the individuals are going to change, then overall we will be able to implement the change successfully. Now, in order to make sure that change is implemented successfully, there should be lack of resistance in the individuals at the end of the cycle, be it at any level. So individual change management is something that is interrelated to all other levels as well. So that is why it is extremely important to understand. That's the first thing that we should keep in our mind before we actually try to get into the process of managing a change. Then organizational change management is a framework for addressing the impact of new business processes, structural changes in the organization, or cultural shifts. So once change is implemented at an individual level, then whatever bigger picture we have at an organization level, those changes will be made, be it in the structure of the organization, or in the cultural shifts, or maybe in the strategies, or maybe in the rules and regulations of the organization. Then once those changes are done, it should be sustained. So it should be embedded in the core values, that is at an enterprise level. So once embraced on an individual and organizational level, change should be embedded in your core values, because there are very high chances that once a change is implemented, people can again go back to the old processes or the old ways, old rules and regulations. In order to make sure that we control it and we prevent people from going back to the old processes, we have to make sure we sustain the change, we sustain the new processes. So it should be embedded into the core values so that it is a part of our day-to-day life at an individual level, at an organization level. So these are the three important levels. First is at individual level, then organization, and then at enterprise level, where it is embedded into the core values so that there is no going back from the new processes. All right. So now that we have understood what exactly is change, what is the need for change or resistance to change, we have also understood the change management, the importance of it and the barriers to it. Now it's time for us to move forward and actually try to understand what are some of the models that we can use in order to manage a change. So in this course, we are going to discuss two such models. Number one is ADKAR change management model, and number two is Kotter's change management model. So in this module, we will be discussing in detail about ADKAR change management model. As you can see on the screen, that change is hard, but using ADKAR can increase the chances of making the process successful. Whenever you are implementing a change, you cannot just implement it. You have to strategize for that. You have to make plans. and you have to make sure it is there at an individual level, then at an organizational level, and eventually it is embedded in the core values of the individuals of the organization. This model, the beauty of it is that it focuses on individuals, and driving individual change will in turn drive the organizational change as well. Now let's try to understand what exactly is ADKAR. So ADKAR is nothing but an acronym for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. And it is at an individual level. So when you say awareness, that means nothing but awareness of the need of change. Everyone in the organization, be it senior management, employees, each and every person should understand what exactly is the need of change. Everyone should be A for awareness, aware about the need of the change. Why are we making this change? Are there any external forces? Are there any internal forces? If yes, what are those forces? What is the need for that particular change? If people will know that, then they will have a purpose that, okay, this is the reason, that is the reason why we are making a particular change. So there are chances they will not resist it if they'll understand the purpose clearly. Then D is desire. Desire to support and take part in the change. Now that is also extremely important. If people are just going to resist it, be it actively resistance or passively resistance, it is not going to work. We have to make sure that people have a desire to support it, and they should show some enthusiasm for bringing that change. And how can we do that? By aligning the goals with their personal goals. Why are we making a change? Those purposes we need to align with the personal goals or with the individual goals of the employees especially. If we are able to do that, they will definitely support the change. They will know that it is going to impact them directly or indirectly. Then knowledge. K means knowledge of how to change. They should be given proper training. They should know what are the skills required to implement that change. Let's say it's a change in some technology. We were using a particular technology. Now we want to use some other technology. If they do not know the other technology, we cannot just come and implement it. First of all, we have to train them. Then we have to see how it works. And then finally, it will be implemented successfully. Then ability to implement the change. Till now, ADK, that is awareness, desire, and knowledge. This is all part of planning and plotting. Now comes the implementation part. Whether people have the ability to implement the change or not. That is the fourth thing that we need to keep in mind before we try to implement the change successfully. Then reinforcement. We have already discussed this thing in certain ways that when we implement a change, there are very high chances that people can go back to the old processes or old strategies and rules. In order to make sure that people do not do that and they don't go back to the old processes, we have to sustain the new processes. Just like we have read in Lewin's model also, first you unfreeze, then you change, and then you refreeze in the new processes. So that refreezing step, that is reinforcing, that is also called sustaining, is very, very important. So that's how exactly a change is implemented. First you make people aware, then you should know that whether they have the desire to support it or not, align their goals with the goals of the change or the purpose of the change. They will have that desire. Then they should have proper training, proper knowledge. They should have the ability to implement that change, and finally to sustain that change. That's what ADKAR change management model is all about. All right. So now let's try to understand what exactly is Kotter's change management model. So first of all, we have understood Lewin's model, which is very simple. It has only 3 steps: unfreeze, change, and freeze. Then we have studied ADKAR's model, which is focusing on individual level. Then we have the Kotter's model, which is much more deeper. It has total 3 phases and 8 steps. We will be understanding more about it in the next slide. But before that, let's try to understand what is the difference between ADKAR and Kotter's model and what is the similarity between these two models. So the main difference is that ADKAR model is a little simpler because it has only 5 steps. Kotter's model is a little complex because it has 3 phases and then 8 steps in total. The main similarity between these two models is that both of these models focuses on the individual levels. They believe that if you can implement the change at an individual level, it will in turn drive the organizational change. Now let's understand how exactly this model works. So this model, that is Kotter's model, is divided into 3 phases and it has 8 steps. So first phase is it create a climate for change. Then second is engage and enable the organization. Then third is implement the change and sustain it. Now let's understand about the steps. So if you go in the first phase, that creating a climate for change. Number one is create urgency. Everyone should know what is the purpose for the change. In ADKAR's model, we called it awareness of need of change. So everyone should know why are we making this change. That urgency should be there. Then number two, build a coalition. There should be an alliance, a team basically. Then create a vision. There should always be some goal where we are supposed to reach. There should be a mission, a vision. Now, if you don't have the vision, you will never have the direction to reach to that future desired position. In order to implement it successfully and make sure that you do not fail in this change effort, you have to make sure you have a very clear vision. Now, coming to the second phase, that is engage and enable the organization. So first step in this is communicate the vision. So whatever clear vision you have set, that should be communicated to each and every person within the organization. Each and every employee should know that we are making this change. This is the reason behind it. And this is the vision. That's how we are supposed to reach to that level. Everyone should be aware about that. So it is very important to communicate that clear vision that we have set. Then empower others. Now we have the vision, but how will we reach there? We should have the required skill set, the knowledge to reach to that desired position. So we have to empower others, help each other. That kind of engagement should be there within the organization. Then create quick wins. Rather than having a long-term clear vision, we should have some short-term visions as well. Some short-term quick wins should be there so that people will feel motivated. Whenever a quick win will be reached, a short-term goal will be reached, people will be motivated to go to the next step. So instead of having a clear vision, that should be there. But along with that, we have some short wins also so that people do not lose control and they feel motivated at each and every step of the change implementation process. Then in the third phase, that is implement and sustain, number one point is build on the change. Now, whatever change we are talking about, we have to build on that. We have to implement it. Everyone is aware about it. We have a clear vision. We have short-term goals. We have empowered others. Everyone has the knowledge, right skills. Now it's the time to implement the change. And once implemented, there should not be any going back. We have to sustain it. We have to embed the change, which is the last step, in our core values to make sure that nobody goes back to those previous processes or previous rules or strategies. So this is the complex model called Kotter's model. Very simple to understand. First of all, you create a climate by creating urgency, building a team and creating a vision. Then you engage and enable the organization by communicating the vision, empowering others and creating quick wins or short-term goals. Then you implement and sustain the change by building on the change and embedding the change into the core values of the organization and the individuals. So that's how it actually works. All right. So now that we have understood what exactly are the different methods for change management, let's try to understand the different factors of successful change management process. So in this particular module, the first point is plan. Start with the end goal in mind and establish plans that are aligned with your overall objectives. So basically, whenever there is a change, we want to implement a change, there's always a reason behind that. So we should have it very clear. The vision should be very clear. We should know where we are supposed to reach. What is that desired future position where we are going? That way we will have a direction and we will be able to implement the change successfully. So planning is extremely important. Having that final goal is extremely important. Also, you should know what exactly is the main objective of your organization and how exactly you can align it with the goals of the change that we are trying to implement. There should be some relation between the two things, the goal of the change that we are implementing and the actual aim, mission of the organization. Then communicate. If you have a clear vision, you have to communicate it to all the internal stakeholders as well as all the external stakeholders. You must have seen there are a lot of companies, whenever they make a change, they inform the external stakeholders as well. That is the consumers or the customers as well. Nobody should be unaware about the need for change, even the external stakeholders. Everyone should know what is the purpose of this particular change and what is the vision. Why are we making this change? Then integrate. Staff and stakeholders should not feel excluded from the change process. Everyone should feel included, heard, and seen, and there should be this integration. Overall, it should be an idea of engagement, enabling the organization. So nobody should feel left out whenever we are talking about implementing a particular change. Then motivate, as we have seen in the Kotter's model also, that always try to have some short goals. Whenever we are making a particular change, a general transition, if we'll have short goals, people will achieve those goals and they'll feel motivated to go to the next step. It should not be a boring process. It should be exciting. People should have that enthusiasm for this process. To make that, you should have some quick wins so that people will be motivated. So motivate the staff for their contribution in the business. Then manage the workload. Change can be a long process, so you have to be very patient and you have to accept delays and flaws as employees learn. So whenever you're planning also, always have that buffer time with you. Because since this concept of change is new to everyone, there are new rules or maybe new strategies. So employees will take some time to get used to that process, to get used to those new strategies, which can take time. So you have to be patient and it can be a very long process also. Sometimes within certain organizations, if we look at the bigger picture, change can be a years long process also. And that's how it is managed. The next step is evaluate. Measure KPIs and take input from employees and make any necessary changes to the original goals. Whenever you have a clear vision, but when you'll actually come to the implementation phase, you'll realize that you can actually take input from the employees and you can understand what are certain things that you can change about the clear vision, change about the main goal also. So it's not like once a goal is fixed or a vision is there, you cannot change. No, the goal is set in order to make sure that you have a direction. But if there is any need to make any changes in that process by taking inputs or by measuring KPIs of the employees, you have to do that in order to make sure that change overall, when is implemented, should be successful. So these are certain things which are very important when we talk about change management and make it successful. All right. So now that you have reached the summary part, I am sure that you have understood what exactly is change, what is change management, why is it important, and what are the different methods that we can use in order to manage a change successfully. Now let me try to summarize this entire course in one small module. So first of all, we started with the definition of change, where we have seen that change is nothing but a general transition from a current position to a future desired position. That's what change is all about. It can be at an individual level, can be at an organizational level, and it can also be at an enterprise level. But the main end of the cycle is an individual. An individual will have to change in order to drive change at any other level. So this is all interrelated. Now there is a lot of resistance that comes with change. We do not want to come out of our comfort zone very easily. So it's not a very easy process to implement a change. Whenever we want to implement a change, there are certain methods that we can use. In this particular course, we have seen three particular methods. One is Lewin's model, then one is ADKAR's model, and one is Kotter's model. In Lewin's model, we have understood that first you unfreeze from the old processes, then you change, you move to the new processes, desired processes, and then you sustain it. You refreeze in that. That was Lewin's model. Then we have understood about ADKAR's model also, where you make people aware, give them the right knowledge, and then finally sustain it, reinforce the change. And then we have seen the Kotter's model as well, where we have seen 3 phases and 8 steps of the entire process. The main funda behind this entire change management process is very simple. First point is you should always plan for it. If there's an external force, in that cases we can't plan. It will be a reactive change and not a proactive change. But in case we can see that there are some symptoms, there are certain things which are going wrong, then we have to pre-plan and then implement it. So planning is a very important part when we talk about change management. Always strategize for it. Make people aware about the need of the change. What is the purpose of this change? In that case, people won't resist it. Especially they won't resist it very actively. That is the beauty of it, because they are knowing that what exactly is the need of this change. Why are we changing these processes or these strategies? Then we have to make sure we make the vision of this particular change very, very clear to all the employees of the organization. Once the vision is clear, people will have a direction to go. They'll have a level where they are supposed to reach, a desired position. That will make the entire change management process very clear. Once that is done, then a change is implemented. Then there are some quick wins, some short goals, and there's a long term goal as well. Once a short term goal is reached, there should be some motivation that is given to the employees so that they are ready to go to the next step. Finally, when a change is implemented after training and giving the required skills to the employees, then it has to be sustained also. People should not go back to the old processes very easily. So there should be some rules, regulations, and strategy for that as well, so that we can embed this change into the core values of the organization. So that's how this entire process of change management works. We started with change, then how it is managed, and what are the different methods for it. I hope you have learned all these skills about change management. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I want to request you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications bell so that you don't miss out on any new updates or video releases from Great Learning. If you enjoy this video, show us some love and like this video. Knowledge increases by sharing. So make sure you share this video with your friends and colleagues. Make sure to comment on the video for any queries or suggestions and I'll respond to your comments.